My name is Randy Hain, and I'm the president of Serviam Partners. And today on the Coach's Corner, I am real excited that we're going to do something a little different. I am joined by my dear friend Lisa Tilt, who I have known for over 20 years. She is the president of Full Tilt Consulting and the founder, and just a world-class human being. And she and I have some really interesting conversations from time to time about subjects that interest us. And the other day we were talking about community and what community means and how we each define it. And we both agreed that would be kind of a fun topic for the Coach's Corner. So Lisa, I am very thrilled to have you on my show.
And I'm thrilled to be here as always. I look for any opportunity for you and I to sit down and just have this dialogue of things, and we know each other so well, and we're able to be candid and share so much, and I've learned so much from you over the years. So you're a good friend, but we are talking about community, which is a subject that is so passionate between the two of us. And I think that, your dedication to the communities around you from a personal perspective, from a family perspective, and same with me, right? We spend a lot of our time in our communities, but you have a different perspective on community, and I love it. So I want to talk with you today about that and explore that subject a little bit.
Absolutely. I'll answer, but you have to answer some of my questions too.
Always.
So, I am very passionate about this idea of community. And I think it goes back to my parents. My mom and dad were just incredible servant leaders in their church community, their neighborhood. They just always took care of the people that sort of came their way. And I'll never forget, there was one little fun sort of anecdote from my past. I remember every week my father, now this is before computers were that popular, he was at his typewriter typing out 110 postcards to all the people in his Sunday school class to get them to it was just a little note from him saying, please come back, or please come, whatever it was. But I just always remembered fondly watching him put that dedication into serving that little group. And he took it very seriously. And he had a busy day job, but he really took care of that little community. And that always stuck with me. So as I got older, I really just, I always had this idea that I needed to build a community. And it started with, as you would guess, where I lived, the people I encountered in the workplace, the people I encountered through my church. So the community is, as you would expect, just the people that you encounter, that you like, that you connect with. And as I got older, then I had sub-communities. I am blessed to have my oldest son, Alex, who happens to have high-functioning autism. Right. So I have an autism community. I have a community of fellow Catholics. I have a community of people that are devoted to developing young people. That's a passion of mine. I have my work community. I have my family, my neighborhood. So my University of Georgia community. Right. So I've built all of these sub-communities over the years. And based on how my parents raised me and what my faith has taught me, I just know that I should always be serving that community. Okay. And I've got to tell you, by serving them and never doing that with an expectation of return, that community has always taken great care of me and my family. So it just seems like a very kind of organic way to do it, but it's the only way I know how, and it's always worked for me. Yeah. So I feel very fortunate. Yeah. Now tell me about you. What's your take on this idea of community?
Oh my gosh, very similar, which is why I think you and I are aligned on so many thoughts, ideas, values, because, and for me too, and I know this about you, the organic piece of that is so important. And if you're not walking into a group with some kind of expectation of what they're going to give you, boy, it just almost relieves sort of the pressure of how to walk into a room, right? And if you walk into a room and say, what can I give to this room or to this person or this conversation, it makes it how you and I just like to do business, right? I mean, with people that we just connect with on just much more than, and I'm talking about a business connection, right? Family, absolutely. All those communities that you listed are so important. And they make us who we are as full people. And we've talked about that, bringing your full self to work. And that's something you and I worked on, decades ago now, even as a concept. And it just makes it allows you. It's almost like room to breathe.
Yes.
And to really be yourself, and not walk into a room with pretense of what you want to get back. So I fully embrace all of that concept and what you've talked about. And for me, there's nothing like sort of a pandemic or time of tragedy. It doesn't even have to be a global pandemic to really know who then your community is. And the people like you and others in my community helped me get through that, helped the business get through that, helped, I could lean on you and I could cry to you and I could say, yes, we did this, and yes, I made a goal, and hear that from you as well. And those tightening of the tightening of those bonds makes that community so much richer. And so yes, we met in a business setting, but you're a dear friend and mentor and confidant. And so again, it's really, you have to be the whole person if you're really going to be somebody who I know I want to do business with, and that you want to do business with.
Thank you.
And so I love that concept of community especially when it ties to a business conversation.
I knew we'd be aligned, even though we probably haven't had this lengthy a discussion about it. I want to run something by you. This is an idea that I don't think I've ever uttered out loud, but I believe it very strongly. I'm curious to get your take.
Yeah.
See, I think that there's actually a bit of a paradox about how I see community. I don't actually look at my community as a groups as much as I do individuals within groups. And let me help you draw the distinction there.
Yeah.
I may have a bunch of friends who are Catholics, or they're parents of autistic children, whatever it is, whatever their community is. But I deal with each of them. I treat each of them as individuals. I almost like freeze time, and I just want to focus on that individual. And I think that's an important distinction, because sometimes we can get lost in, I've got to get something out to those people. I've got to send an email out to that 500 person group. That's not how I look at it. It's like, I'm going to sit down with Lisa, and I really want to know what's going on in your world right now. I'll get over to Catherine and John and Michael later, but right now I'm focused on Lisa. And it's slowing down time to live in the moment with people. So even though I love community, and you and I both have large communities, I really care much more about the individuals. And I hope that's not too fond of a distinction, but that's how I see it. What's your take?
Well, I think you have to, because when we were talking, and when you were even just now listing your communities when we started the conversation, I said, wow, that's a lot of time and a lot of people. And you can't be all things to all people. And you have to also treasure your own time and have time for yourself, which is an important community, right?
Yes.
And so that, I think you've articulated it exactly right, in that it's not about, it is about the individual, because that's how we connect anyway. You don't connect with a group per se. You always, even within that group, you have affinities with that person, and so the conversation is around something where you've connected. And that's what we talk to, when I talk to my teams about that. When you walk into a room, you just find somebody you connect on something about, and then just have a conversation and see where it leads. And so the concept of the individual, I think, is important, not only for how you connect, but how you frankly manage that from a time perspective. And I don't want to feel guilty too about, oh my gosh, I really haven't connected with the church in a long time, or with a particular group of family members, or whatever that might be. But it's, whenever I think of a group, somebody or some couple people are typically the ones that pop into my head. So I agree. I think
about some advice that my dad gave. I always go back to my dad, Steve. He's 82, still alive, he'd give you the shirt off his back. He's just one of those people. But I'll never forget when I graduated from college, he gave me the best advice about building relationships, and it really was a foundational piece of how I look at community. And just to give you a quick summary, he advised me, because I was starting a new job, didn't know anything about it, and didn't know anybody. He said, Randy, when you go into this new workplace, I want you to think about first serving others. How can I help? What can I do for you? And that was easy. Mom and dad were servant leaders. I got the concept. So got to serve people. Second, be curious. You have to be willing and really interested in learning about other people. I do want to learn about other people. I care about what's going on in your house. I care about what's going on with your kids.
Yeah.
So be curious. And the third piece, which didn't make sense when I was 21, but at 54 it makes a lot of sense now, is add value.
Yes.
Always add value.
So important.
So I think about this idea of I'm here to help you, I'm really interested in you, and I want to add value. And you think about that as a foundational piece of building relationships that become communities, and you're off to a good start.
Yeah.
You know, you agree with that?
I do. And it's interesting the way you've laid it out, because it's also something that comes very naturally to you and I and other people that we know. And so you get to the point where you don't even think about those things anymore, and just making sure, okay, do I have all three parts, right? And I think there's some element of, yes, I feel that kind of the growth mindset that you can learn almost anything, but what comes naturally to you is what you're going to do consistently and over and over and over again. And the consistency piece, I think, really is part of what defines you as a person, which I think is a part. So it's not just what you put out there; it's how what you put out there is perceived, right? And how it's taken, and how it's interpreted, and within context. I mean, all of these things matter, right? When you have a conversation with somebody, you're having three. You're having the conversation that you're projecting, you're having the conversation that you are hearing, and then you're having the conversation that's the context between our almost 20 years together.
You just blew my mind. But you're right.
Welcome to somebody who has is in the world of communication.
But I totally get it. That's cool.
But right? I mean, because there's so much. But if you thought about that every time you and I picked up the phone, that's a weighty thing. Yeah. But it's true. It's always happening. It's always happening. It's the same. When I check out at Trader Joe's, I always go to the same guy. He has the best stories. He lets my daughter check out. These are these stories and these interactions in our community, and basically my life is like in a 3-mile radius, and I love that. We travel the world, but it's also there's a comfort, and there's not too much comfort that we can have in our world these days, right?
I agree.
And so I just really hearken on the piece of those are all critical pieces that you're talking about to learn and to recognize. But the real joy comes when you just do it without thinking about it.
Absolutely. So to put a cherry on the sundae and wrap this thing up so people can walk away with something practical and meaty and actionable, what would be some advice you would give to the people watching this today? What are some takeaways about community building that you want people to know?
It's a very good question, and something I'm always considering, right? And there's tips that come all the time. I will say probably one of them, it ties into something that we've already talked about, is to not force yourself into communities where you're really kind of a fish out of water, right? And some of us are introverts, and some of us are inherently not, but even if I might not be an introvert, I absolutely have my introvert tendencies, and so really sort of understanding that. So I don't always love walking into a room. I mean, normally I can talk to a wall, and I'm okay with that. But I think it's really important, especially if you're getting started in sort of the concept, is to go where you feel the most comfortable. And that should be something that's right on the tip of your tongue or, top of mind. It shouldn't be too complex to figure that out. So if you say, okay, well, I'm going to, figure out what do I contribute? How do I give back to the group that is every Sunday that I see, or in Thanksgiving dinner, making it more harmonious, perhaps not talking about politics or whatever that is.
That's a trick.
Right, it is a trick. Whatever that is, I want to give permission to say this can be something that you can start off slowly. You don't have to say, okay, here are my 10 communities that I'm going to go out. Start slowly and do it what's inherently and authentically yourself first, and get that comfort level, and then expand.
I love that. If I were to think about the same question,
Because I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, gosh, I want to bring it down from like 15 ideas I've got down to a couple.
Well, that's kind of what I was like.
So a couple of things. One is, first of all, everybody that's watching this knows people. We all know people. Some of us know lots of people. And one of the things I encourage people to think about is you're going to go through waves, or you're going to go through periods or seasons with some groups versus others. And my point is, don't feel like you have to give everyone exactly the same amount of time and energy all the time. Like there are months that I don't do anything with my community of parents with special needs children. There's some months it's intense and I love it, but you go in waves. So my point is, if you've been building a community for a while and you want to know a way to stay sane, just go with the moment, go with the flow. Hang with where you're adding value, and then when you stop adding value, go to another community. Maybe you could do multiple communities, but be thinking about, I'm not going to go crazy trying to serve everybody the same way. There's no way to do it. The other thing is, I think that there is a glue that sort of binds it all together, and I think it's when we, the community builders, are acting with basic courtesy and kindness and curiosity and giving grace and those things that make life rich and worthwhile. When we're acting that way towards everyone, it just creates a much more pleasant environment, but it's also kind of the glue that holds it all together. And then I want to just reiterate what you said a little while ago. You have to go into community building with the mindset, I want nothing. I want nothing but your friendship. I want nothing but the connection to you. And if something good does come your way, then that's just a bonus.
That's right.
I recommend to everyone who's watching this the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. It is a wonderful book, and he makes the point in the book that giving leaders that are selfless givers are by far the most successful, and he proves it. He's a great writer. So when you're thinking about this, gosh, I'm watching this thing on community, what are Randy and Lisa talking about? Start small, build it, serve it, don't have expectations of it, and it will take amazing care of you and everyone around you.
That's right.
So with that, we
Great
will end
summary.
on community.
Yes.
Lisa, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Take care.
You too.